Okay, so first things first, the shiur is titled Noach's Unwillingness to Procreate. And I have to apologize in advance because I said at the beginning of this year's series of Friday morning shiurim that I was going to try to not do two-part or more shiurim. I was going to try to keep a different topic each week. But, sometimes the topic dictates the length of the shiur. And I realized that there are so many questions and facts that I think what's going to happen is this is going to be almost exclusively questions and facts today, and then we'll try to approach it next week. Okay, and I could also use some time to think about this on my own. I think you're going to want to think about this on your own also, because there's going to be a lot here. That's preface number one. Preface number two is that I'm going to do something very unusual, which especially for people who have been in my shiurim a lot, my Chumash shiurim especially, is I'm going to focus on Rashi. Okay, and the reason why I'm going to focus on Rashi is actually circumstantial. Is that when I prepared this over Shmini Atzeres, and we had a bunch of people learning with us, and the only Mepharshim that we had enough copies of for everybody was Rashi. So we ended up doing Rashi, and it ended up being great. And it's not that I have anything against Rashi. It's that there's two reasons why I typically don't use Rashi on Chumash. And one has to do with Rashi's mission. Okay. And I thought that since this is the beginning of the year and the beginning of a new Torah cycle last week, then I wanted to review Rashi's mission statement. This is on Berashit Gimel Ches. Okay. You don't need to know the context. Rashi says, Yesh midrashe agada rabim. There are many agadic midrashim. Okay. Meaning not halachic midrashim that have insight into halacha, but non-halachic midrashim. Ukvar sidrum rabbaseinu al mechonam b'Beraishis Rabbah, and our rabbis already set them up in their proper places in Beraishis Rabbah, Ushar Midrashos, and in other midrashic collections. And then here's where he states his mission: Va'ani, and I, lo basi ela lepshuto shel mikra, I am only coming for the pshat of the pesukim, ula agada hamiyasheves divrei hamikra, and for agada, for non-halachic teachings which settle the words of the pesukim upshuto ushmuaso with their straightforward meaning and upshuto ushmuaso. Yeah, actually, this is a different edition of Rashi than I'm used to. I think the standard editions of Rashi don't have that. Okay, I'll have to reassess this now. I didn't realize this. Dibur al-Fanav. So agadas which settle the language of the pesukim, each word in its proper way. Okay, so my understanding of this is that Rashi has two missions. In other words, when you see a Rashi, he's doing one of two things. Either he's explaining the pshat, or he's giving you a midrash, but it's not just any midrash. It's a midrash that you can read easily into the words of the pshat, or that explains the textual anomalies, might be a better way of saying it. So there are people who do learn that Rashi is only pshat. I'm not of that opinion. And I also find that even when Rashi is bringing in midrashim for the so one of the reasons why I prefer Rashi's not one of my go-to Mepharshim on Chumash is I do prefer the pshat before the midrash. I do enjoy learning midrash, but I feel like I need to learn the pshat first. And I find that Rashi is not the best tool for that for me. There are other Mepharshim who focus on more pshuto shemikra. Secondly, I find that in order to really learn Rashi, you really need to learn all of the Rashis on the relevant topic. And that's what we're going to be doing today. And it's a big endeavor. You really need a lot of bikius. You need to cover a lot of ground and really hold a lot of things in your head. And I'm just typically not on that level to do that, but I'm going to attempt it today. Okay. So the plan for today is to go through the Rashis on Parshas Noach with our eye on one major theoretical topic. Okay. And one subtopic, all of which was I was prompted to investigate these based on a unit within Torah Machshavah. Okay, I know that doesn't make any sense. Let me explain. I originally wanted to understand what was the deal with Noach after the flood, right? After the flood, he plants a vineyard and gets drunk and something bad happens. Okay, so I started to investigate that. And as I was learning through this with Ken and Johnny, then we realized that there's something else going on here. And that incident of the drunkenness was really the final chapter in an unfolding drama that had to do with one of Noach's underappreciated faults. Okay, and that's really what I want to explore. Okay, and there's a side topic in there also. Okay, so as I mentioned in the shiur description, I said that if you ask the ordinary, just an average Jew, like who repopulated the earth after the flood, I think people without thinking would say Noach and his children, right? And to a certain extent, it's true. Like Noach's children obviously come from him, so you could say Noach repopulated the world. But if you look at the actual account in the Chumash, you'll notice Noach never has any other kids after the flood. And I don't know, I just never really thought about this before. Like, I of course I noticed it. Like, if you asked me name Noach's kids, I would say Shem, Ham, and Yafes. But it just didn't click for me that Noach never had any other kids after the flood. And in fact, when you look at the genealogy in chapter 10, it says Ve'ele Toldos, and I almost misread this pasuk when I went back to check it up. I almost read it as Ele Toldos Noach. These are the offspring of Noach, but it doesn't say that. It says Ve'ele Toldos B'nei Noach, Shem, Cham, V'Yafes, V'Yivaldu Lahem Banim Achar Mabul, and they had children after the Mabul. Okay, and it goes through all their descendants. So the question is like, what do we make of this? The fact that Noach didn't have kids. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning, okay? And like I said, we're going to go through a lot of facts. And what I tried to do is I highlighted, we're not going to read through every pasuk, but I highlighted the pesukim and the Rashis that we need to go through. And the pesukim we don't read, I'll just paraphrase, okay? Because otherwise we'll be here all day.
I just have a quick side question. When you said underappreciated fault, did you mean something that just like people just don't talk about or acknowledge or
know that it exists? Yeah, okay. Exactly. Thanks. At least and maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I did not notice this at all. Okay, I did not notice that there is that Noach didn't want to have kids. Okay, and that I'm calling it a theory, but I think I'm going to convince you that it is at least explicitly stated, like in the Mepharshim. So like it's not open in the pesukim. Okay, what's open in the pesukim is he did not have kids. And what we're going to see from the Rashis is that he didn't want to have kids. Okay. And I just was not aware of that till this year. Okay. So we start off with the beginning of this week's Parsha, which is, I guess I'll read this passage because it revs into it. Ele told us Noach, ish tzadik, tamim haya b'dorasav, es halahim hisalech Noach. These are the offspring of Noach, or the Chronicles of Noach, depending on how you want to translate Toldos. Noach was a righteous man, whole in his generations, es halahim hisalech Noach. And, Noach walked with God. Now, this is a famous Rashi, probably because it's the first Rashi in the Parsha, or at least Rashi on the first pasuk of the Parsha. When it says, what does it mean when it says he was ish tzaddik who was tamim in his generations? So famously, Rashi says, Yesh me rabbeinu dorshim l'shavach. Some of our rabbis expound on this for praise, namely, kol shekein ilu haya b'dor tzaddikim haya tzaddik yoser. Right. So why does it say a tzaddik in his generations? Because it means that if in his generations his generation was bad, he was a tzaddik, then all the more so he would be a tzaddik in other generations. Okay, v'yesh dorshim lignai, and there are those who interpret this for degradation. Lefi doro haya tzaddik, relative to his generation, he was a tzaddik. V'lo haya b'dor shel Avraham, lo haya nechshav klum. And if he were in the generation of Avraham, he wouldn't be considered anything. Okay, meaning he wouldn't be anything special. Okay, and again, when it says generation of Avraham, it doesn't mean like compared to all the people in Abraham's generation, because there weren't that many great people then either. But it means like if the standard that we're setting here is based on what the tzaddikim were like, so Abraham was a great tzaddik and Noach would be inferior. Reason why I'm reading this now is because this really affects the way you read the entire Parshas Noach, right? Is Noach an extremely righteous person, or is he only righteous relative to his generations? And that's going to really literally affect how you read every decision that Noach makes, okay, and everything that happens to him. Okay, so just setting that out there. I'm not going to take a stance on that, but I feel like when we start to answer questions, we will have to take a stance on that to a certain extent. Okay, so what happens? Vayolad Noach shlosha banim es Shem, es Ham, es Yafes. Noach begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafes. Oh, and by the way, feel free to interject at any point with either clarification questions or questions that you want me to write down. I'm going to be writing down the questions that are germane to our investigation, but we can take other questions as well. Okay. Vatisha ches ha'aretz lifnei Elokim. The earth became corrupt before God, vatimale haaretz chamas, and the land became filled with chamas. I translate chamas as violent crime. Okay, so here we have Rashi saying, and this goes without saying, but when I say Rashi, I mean Rashi is usually just bringing down a midrash. Okay, but I'm not going to say the midrash. I'll say Rashi. So Rashi says, vatishaches, the earth was corrupted, lashon erva. Okay, this implies what do you call it? Illicit sexual relations. Okay, avodah zara and idolatry. And he brings proofs, kumo pentash chisun in Devarim Daled Tezayin, the context of which is avodah zara, and then hishchis kol basar, that all flesh became corrupted, which he's going to explain in Vav Yud Beis. And the earth became filled with Hamas, which is gezel, which is robbery, okay, violent theft. All right, so we have three categories of averos: sexual, prohibited sexual relations, avodah zara, and violent theft. Okay, then the pasuk goes back and says in Yud Beis, "V'yar Elokim es aretz v'hinei nishchasa, ki hishchis kol basar es darko al haaretz." God saw that the land, that the earth was corrupt. Okay, so that's a new point, right? That it's talking about God seeing, which is going to have something to do with God's hashgacha. But then here it adds something that seemingly is redundant or needs to be explained. Ki hishchis kol basar es darko al haaretz, because all flesh corrupted its way on the earth. All right. So the question that Rashi is going to respond to is, what is all flesh coming to include? So Rashi says, afilu behema v'chaya v'ovos nizkakim l'she'enan minam. Even the domesticated animals and wild animals and birds were having relations with members not of their own species. Okay, cross-species sexual relations. Okay, so I mentioned that there's going to be a sub-theme. Okay, so the anchor theme here is Noach's vineyard. The broad theme is Noach's unwillingness to procreate, and then there's this like subplot going on, which I hope to convince you is real. Okay, which is animal sexual morality. Okay, and this is the first data point, which is that the animals were engaging in like sexual relations that were not of their species. Now, does anyone? I think I've read that this can happen in the wild. Okay, I mean, obviously this can happen artificially, that you can crossbreed animals, which the Torah prohibits. But like, I think this can happen in the wild. I think I've heard of that. Okay, but the question here is like, what's going on? What are Chazal trying to get at by saying that the animals were engaging in this? Okay, what question do you think maybe? I mean, obviously the local question is that it's saying, why does it say kol basar? Okay, but what greater question in the entire story do you think Chazal are trying to address by pointing out that the animals were engaged in illicit sexual behavior?
Maybe like, why did God have to destroy all life and not just people?
Exactly, right. Why did God have to destroy all life and not just people? Okay, and there are people who explain, there are Mepharshim who explain that, that since animals exist for human beings, then if humans are corrupt, then what's the point of the animals? But then other Mepharshim say no, like animals have exist for their own good as well, and so here animals were corrupt. Okay, but what's the problem with saying that God destroyed all animals because they were sexually corrupt?
That he created them.
Okay, he did create them. That's true.
Really have decision.
Yeah, say it again.
They don't have bechira.
Yeah, they don't have bechira, right? Is animals, like the whole notion of punishing animals, for lack of a better term, is absurd. Animals don't have free will, and therefore, if they do engage in cross, species sexual relations, that's just, they're acting on instinct, right? Like why is that? Why are they deserving of destruction? Okay, and I admit I'm reading a little bit into this. I'm reading morality. You can say this is not a punishment. You can say that it's just that they weren't functioning properly. Okay, but you'll see where I'm getting this as I give you more data points. Okay, so I'm going to add this broad question here, which is, what do we make of this notion that the animals were sexually corrupt? Okay, and I'll add to that question as we get more data points. Okay, so then he says, here's data point number 2, pasuk Yud Gimel. V'yomer Elokim, God said Lenoach to Noach, Kates kol basar balafanai. The end of all flesh has come before me. Because the earth has become filled with a violent crime because of them. And behold, I will destroy. I'm going to destroy the earth. Okay, so I just want to point out here, Rashi says, Kol makom she'ata motze znus androlomosia bala olam v'horegas tovim v'ra'im. Okay, so any place where you find promiscuity, okay, then androlomesia comes to the world. What is androlomesia? So it is clearly not a Hebrew word. Androlemesia. Oh. Nope. Okay. There is a word. Hold on a second. Andromisia, Greek? No, not Andromeda. Okay, I looked it up. There must be spelled differently in Hebrew. Androlemosia was a type of punishment that was enacted in Greece. I'm not going to use that. Let me use the example we're familiar with. In like elementary school, where like a couple kids are bad and then the teacher punishes the entire class. There was a punishment in Greece that was like that. Okay, where like if a certain people within a city were doing crimes, it would be an indiscriminate punishment. So Rashi is saying that anytime you find promiscuity, then this indiscriminate punishment comes to the world. V'horeges tovim v'ra'im, and kills good and the bad. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting this Rashi is, strictly speaking, erva does not mean sexual promiscuity. Erva means sexual. It means arayos, right? Which is the specific sexual prohibitions that are outlined in Parshas Acharemos that are chayav kares. Okay, that's for Jews, and then for the non-Jews, it would be the 6 arayos that they're chayav in, which is, let's see if I could get all of them, which is adultery, father and daughter sleeping together, what do you call it? Mother and son sleeping together, sleeping with a maternal sister. I think it's maternal. Homosexual relations between men, and bestiality. Okay, so that's what arayos are. But then once Rashi, so you might think that it's just like arayos that they were guilty of, but then znus means promiscuity. Okay, it means like sleeping around, like having like loose sexual morals, etc. Okay, so that's why I wanted to highlight that Rashi. And then Kimala Haaretz, the earth was filled with Hamas, lo nechtam gzar dinam ela al hagezel. That that even though they were involved in arayos and avodah zarah and znus, their verdict was only sealed because of gezel, because of the violent robbery. Okay, so that's why the earth was destroyed. Okay, moving on. Again, interrupt me if you have any questions or comments. We have a lot to cover here. Okay. So then he instructs him to build the ark. He gives him the instructions. Okay. Then he says, "V'hinini v'ani hinini mevi as hamabul ma'im al haaretz l'shachis kol basar shabo ruachayim mitakas l'shmayim kol asher ba'aretz yikva." Behold, I will bring a flood of water upon the earth to destroy all flesh that has breath in its nostrils. It has the spirit of life in it under the heavens. Everything that is on the earth will perish. Yudches v'hakimosi es brisi itach. Okay. I will establish my covenant with you. Uvasa el teva. And you will come into the ark. Ata, you, uvanecha, and your sons, v'ishtecha, and your wife, unashevanecha, and your sons' wives, itach. So notice the order is you and your sons, and then your wife and your sons' wives. So Rashi points out, ha'anashim levad, va'anashim levad. Men separately and women separately. Mikan shene'esru b'tashmi shamita. From here, it is usher to engage in. You see that it was usher for them to engage in marital relations on the ark. Okay, and Rashi here doesn't explain why, but he'll explain why later on. Okay, so he's getting that from the order of the people in the pasuk, and that's going to be relevant. Okay, then he says in the pasuk, Yutes umikol hachai mikol basar shanai mikol tavi al hatevel lahachiyos itach zakar and akiva yihiyu. From all living things, from all flesh, 2 of all bring into the ark, or you should bring into the ark to live with you, male and female they should be. Me'of leminehu 20, pasuk 20, from the birds according to their species, uminav hema lemina, and from the domesticated animals according to their species, mikol remes adama leminehu, and all creeping things on the earth according to their species, shnaim mikol yavo elecha lahachios, 2 from all of them they will come to you to live. Okay, now question here is, why do we need to say according to their species? Isn't that implied by 2 from all of them? So here Rashi says, okay, osam shedavku b'minehem, only the ones that clung to their species, v'lo hishchisu es darkam, not the ones that corrupted their way. Okay, in other words, we said that the earth was filled with animals that were cross species mingling. So Noach did not bring any of those bad guys, those bad animals. He only brought the ones that stuck to their own species. Okay, the ones that were sexually moral, so to speak. Okay, so that's data point number 2 about the subplot. Okay, then he says, okay, fine, take for yourselves everything you need to eat. And Noach did everything that God commanded. Okay. And note here, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Just to
hold on.
understand, just factually. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just the one point we see here, it says Noach did everything that God commanded him to do. You'll see that that is not the case in the rest of the story. But here, so far, Noach was obeying orders. Yeah, Esty?
Okay, just to understand. So that means that not all the species were cross mating, and whichever ones were not the ones that went on the teva, according to this?
No. So the way I understood it is he is getting 2 from every species, but only specimens, only couples that were not engaged.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. All right, thank you.
So in other words, all species were saved, but only members that did not engage in sexually corrupt behavior.
And all species were engaged in sexually corrupt behavior.
I
but
guess
only
among
individuals
all
that weren't?
species, then there was this type of corruption. Yeah.
Okay, and then the individual animals that weren't involved in that were ones that were.
Yeah,
saved.
that's how I'm reading it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. Next chapter, 7. Okay, so then it goes and talks about all the preparations. Okay, again, I'm skipping all of that. And it says Noach was 600 years old when this happened. Okay, now we get to the actual going on to the ark. Vayavo Noach uvanav ishto u'neshevanavito ela teva. Noach and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, okay, the same order, went into the teva mipnei mehamabul because of the floodwaters. Okay, and here Rashi iterates but adds. He says, "Hanashim levad v'hanashim levad, men alone and women alone, lefi shene'asru b'tashim shemita, because they were prohibited in sexual relations on the ark. Mipnei sheha'olam shawari b'tsa'ar, because the world was literally steeped in distress." Okay, now this is a halacha that is relevant even in the halachic system. That, for example, when there is a fast that is decreed upon the community because of a tzara, then it's usher to engage in marital relations. Okay, I don't know what the parameters of that are. Does anyone just have a basic idea of why that's the case? Like why can't you engage in sexual relations if there's a tzara going on? This is a side idea.
Maybe it would put you in the wrong headspace. Like you're supposed to be learning something and not being involved in personal pleasure in that way.
Okay, correct. So I those who were in last night's shiur, I said I would quote this in today's shiur, which is the Meiri explains this in the Basic Bechira in Tainus. He says, Tainus 11a, even in the years of famine, it is proper for a person to not satiate himself. The objective of this is that he not forget the hunger in the house of his friend, thereby causing him to stiffen his neck and not share in the worry of his friend. So in other words, let's say it's a famine and you have food and other people don't, you should not indulge in food because that's going to cause you to I think it says stiffen your neck. There's a certain cruelty or indifference to the suffering of other people. Likewise, a person shouldn't pamper himself, nor should he engage in marital relations during years of famine. This is explained in the Jerusalem Talmud, and I'm going to read the Hebrew because it's more dramatic. It shouldn't be that God is involved in destroying the world while you build it. Okay, so part of it has to do with the lack of identification and the cruelty of you engaging in something pleasurable when other people are deprived. The other part has to do with you building the world while God is destroying the world. Okay, and that I think is more relevant here, which is the world's literally being destroyed here, and so they should not be engaged in procreation. Okay, so that's just reinforcing this. Okay, so then we go on. They go onto the ark. All the animals go on, and then it goes through all of the rain and the springs, and the rain was raining for 40 days, and the mountains were covered, taking us through into chapter 8. God remembers Noach, etc. The waters start going down, and then he sends out the bird. Then we get to finally God instructs him to leave the ark. Okay, so now we're into Beraishis Ches Tesvav. God spoke to Noach saying, Tazayin, say minateva, leave the ark. Ata v'ishtecha uvenecha u'neshevenecha itach. Okay, you, your wife, your son, and your wife's sons. Sorry, not your wife's sons, your sons' wives. Okay, so what do you notice here, even before looking at Rashi?
That the genders are mixed anymore.
The genders are mixing.
Or sorry, right? They are mixed now. Yeah.
Exactly. So what do we see from this? So Rashi says, Ata v'ishtecha ish v'ishto, man and his wife, kan hitir lehem tashmi shamita mi'ata. From here and on, God is permitting them to engage in marital relations. Okay, so this is like God implicitly like endorsing pru uruvu. Okay, and I say implicitly because we're going to keep track of how many times and how many ways God tries to get Noach to engage in pru uruvu. Okay, so this is the implicit one. Okay, so it's like God saying, okay, Noach, go with your wife again. Okay, and Hashem come in the office, get together with your wives again. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, then kol hachaya asher itcha mikol basar, all of the wild animals that are with you from all flesh, of the birds and the domesticated animals and everything that moves on the earth, that go out with you, swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Okay, so Rashi notes, why does it say ba'aretz twice? Vishartu ba'aretz, Rashi says, velo bateva, and not on the ark. Magid, this tells you, she'af habehema va'of ne'esru b'tashmish. This tells you that even the domesticated animals and birds were prohibited to engage in sexual relations. Okay, so there again, it's actually in halakha terminology this time that just like Noach and his family was prohibited in sexual relations on the ark, so too the animals, and that's why God is saying, okay, now you can be fruitful and multiply on the earth because you couldn't do it on the teva. Okay, and then one more little point in the subplot here in pasuk pasuk Yudches. Vayete Noach uvanav ishto u'nasheva navito. Noach went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. So what do you notice about that pasuk?
That they're separated again.
That they're separated again. Okay, so this is the first clue we have that something is awry, something is wrong here, right? God instructed them to go onto the ark with separate seating. Okay, then he, in order to prohibit them in sexual relations on the ark, then God told them to go off the ark in order to permit them to engage in marital relations again, but they did not follow that. They went off separate. Okay, so that's the first inclination of something wrong. Okay, Rashi does not comment here. He's going to explain it later on. Okay, then we have a funny sentence, which I never noticed till this year. Kol hachaya, kol haremes, kol ha'of. Every wild animal and every moving animal and every bird and kol romes al ha'aretz, everything that moves on the earth. Lemishpachosehem yatu min hateva. They went out from the ark according to their families. What's the obvious like weird thing about saying according to their families?
There are only two of each. Like,
there's only two of each, right?
No
Family to me, at
anymore?
least, family implies like parents and offspring, and the Torah had no problem earlier using the word two, right? It should have said gone off in their pairs. Okay, so Rashi comments and says lemishpochosehem kiblu alehem almanas lihidabik b'minan. The animals accepted upon themselves to stick with their species. Okay, and that is the end of the subplot. Okay, so I'm going to type this all out just to highlight it here. Okay, so specifically, so we said, what did we make of this notion that the animals were sexually corrupt? Okay, specifically, okay, what is the significance of the fact that the animals were engaged in cross-species relations prior to the flood? Okay, animals have no free will. Okay, how does this like, in what sense is this corrupt and deserving of destruction? Okay, so that's A. All right, you know what, I'm gonna put this in oops. Okay, that's A. Okay, 2, why did Noach only take animals that were sexually not corrupt? Okay, 3, why were the animals prohibited from engaging in relations on the ark? Okay, and then D, what does it mean that the animals accepted upon themselves to cling only to their own species after leaving the ark? Now, you could just dismiss all of this, okay, and say that it's bad for nature if animals are not procreating with their species, and this is just saying that, like, God wanted to ensure that that like, things got off to a good start after the flood. And the reason why they couldn't procreate on the ark is because you don't want to like have, bunny rabbits like multiplying out of control, like on the ark, because it's going to, destroy the food supply or whatever. You could just say that and dismiss it. I think though that this actually is a sub theme, that it's talking about in the same way that we see like the sexual perversion and corruption, and then going into the ark and then abstaining and then like repopulating according to proper sexual norms. Something similar happened with the animals. That's why I'm calling it a sub theme. Okay, so that takes care of the animal part. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm just a little confused. Maybe this is just part of the question, or maybe it's a non-issue. Just if God created the animals, maybe this is the question. What does this even mean to say that they agreed not to, or that if they weren't supposed to, how is it possible that their instincts were compelling them to? I just don't really understand.
That is part of the question. Yeah. In other words, like we shouldn't even be able to speak of animal corruption, morality, prohibitions, mitzvos, accepting upon themselves. Like all of these are terms that are only applicable to human beings who have free will, not to animals. Yeah.
Okay. And the way that they started doing anything like this in the beginning, I mean, is that's part of the question? Like, was it built into their nature or not? Like,
it's not. That's not addressed. You could say that the pesukim imply that they were influenced to corruption by the humans, but no one says that I've seen. Certainly the pesukim don't, and then Rashi doesn't, and we're really focusing on Rashi here.
Okay, I guess let's wait and see.
Yep, I guess so. Hopefully. And by the way, I don't have an answer to this question yet. Okay, this is another reason why like it'll help to have another week. Okay, so then we go on. Noach builds an ark, offers a sacrifice. Okay, which now I can announce it because I think this is actually going to happen within a matter of hours after the shiur. Okay, side commercial. Okay, I'm launching a new experiment, which is I'm launching a Substack. Okay, Substacks are the new blogs. Okay, and the main difference is that you can subscribe to get the articles through email. And there's other differences as well. For me, I just need a new medium, and I want to try writing at least one article each week, see if that works out. And I'm writing an article on this next phrase of Yarach Hashem es reach anichoach. Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma of the korban and said he's not going to curse the earth and strike down every living thing again. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Okay, and he says that the seasons will not cease. Okay, so that's God saying, oh, I actually forgot this part. This is Hashem saying el libo, right? Hashem said to his heart. Okay, now what does that mean? So Rashi doesn't explain what it means that he said to his heart. I think Ibn Ezra does though. El libo means kamo im libo. He said basically with himself, the achreichin gila soda el Noach. Then afterwards, he revealed his secret to Noach. So at this point in the story, Noach does not know that there isn't going to be another flood. Okay, this is just God telling us, or telling him, this is just God himself that the Torah is like giving us insight into. But Noach at this point does not know that there's not going to be another flood. Okay, this is just God making the decision, so to speak. Okay. Then we get to chapter 9, and chapter 9 begins a speech to Noach. Okay, and the speech begins with Vayivarach Elokim es Noach v'esbanav. God blessed Noach and his sons. Vayomer lahem, and he says to them, Puru uravu umilu es haaretz. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now, where do you recognize that phrase from?
And Berashit.
Yep. Where?
When the animals are created. Oh, I don't know the pasuk.
No, not pasuk and verse. Who did he say this to in Berashit?
You mean other than the animals, like to Adam and Chava?
Yeah, right. So you're right. It's two places, right? It's to the fish and the birds, which is on day 5. Yeah, on day 5, he says, "Vayivarach osam elokim lemor pru urvu milu es hamayim." Okay, not the arts because it's fish and birds. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters." By yamim in the seas, v'ha'ov yirav ba'aretz, and the birds will multiply on the earth. And then he says to Adam and Chava, "Vayivarach osam elokim." God blessed them, v'yomer lahem, and he said to them, Elokim, God said to them, "Pru urvu milu es haaretz v'chiv shuha." Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and conquer it. Okay, so he's saying the same thing to Noah. Okay, and I don't think it's a stretch to say like, oh, this is like a new beginning. In the same way that Adam and Chava had to be fruitful and multiply, so to Noah. Okay, fine. Then he goes through the pesukim which Chazal derive the Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach from, or say that the mitzvos are alluded to. And he gives them permission to eat. He says, don't murder. I'm actually going to read this one because this is going to be relevant to Midrash. Shofek dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech, ki b'tzelem Elokim asa es adam. One who sheds the blood of man, by man his blood will be shed. Is that how you translate it? Yeah, by man his blood will be shed. Ki b'tzelem Elokim asa es adam, because God made man. Because man was made in God's image. He made man in God's image or form. Okay. V'atem, and you, pru uruvu shirtzuv arts uruvuva. Be fruitful and multiply, swarm on the earth and multiply in it. Now, without looking at Rashi, what do you think Rashi is going to be bothered by about this pasuk? V'atem pru uruvu shirtzuv arts uruvuva.
It says uruvu twice.
Okay, so it says pru uruvu twice within the pasuk. That's one thing.
Specifically in the art.
Okay, specifically in the arts, that's true. That is true. There's two more weird anomalies.
But it says shirtzu because it's usually used for animals.
Okay, right. So shoretz is a term that means swarm, right? That is used for animals. And in fact, he did say this to the animals in 8, right? In 8. We just read that. Didn't we just read this? Yeah, he tells them no, he didn't. Yeah, shartzuvaretz, right? Swarm on the earth. It is used by Bnei Israel in Mitzrayim to describe their multiplying, but that's figurative, right? That they had tons of kids. But the question is, why does it say it here? And then furthermore, didn't he already tell them pru uruvu? Right? He began the speech by saying, now he's saying it a second time. Okay, so Rashi answers a couple of those questions. He says, Lefi pshuto, according to the pshat, harishona livracha v'kan letzivoy, that the first time he said it was blessing them. Okay, this time it is a commandment. Okay, that's the pshat. And then the drush, Lefi midrash, according to the midrashic interpretation, lahakish mi she'eno osik b'pirya v'rivya l'shofek damim. This is to compare one who does not engage in pru uruvu to one who spills blood. Now, where does he get that from?
The juxtaposition, because
the juxtaposition, right? The pasuk before said it's usher to shed the blood of a human being, and you guys be involved in pru uruvu. So it's comparing. It's obviously not equating, because not having kids is not the same thing as going around and murdering people, right? But it's saying that in the same way that a murderer is depriving the human species of lives actively, so too, if you refrain from doing pru uruvu, intentionally, obviously, if you can't have kids, that's a different thing. But if you refrain from pru uruvu, then you are depriving the world of people who could be existing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here you have now. We're going to keep track of this. We're going to keep score. Okay. The first time God indicated that Noach should do pru uruvu was by telling him to leave the ark with his wife. Okay. So that was implicit. Okay, which is very, very just alluding to this. Okay, second time he tells him to do this is blessing him, saying, may you be fruitful and multiply. Third time is he's commanding Noach to do this. Okay, so we've got 3 instances of divine urging. Okay, then if you look at the Mepharshim other than Rashi, you have other indications as well. And I said we're focusing on Rashi. I'm only doing other Mepharshim who are learning in line with Rashi. Okay. So Ramban says like this: V'atem pru uruvu pshuto k'midrasho shehi mitzvah ki ha'amur ba'adam gam b'bnei Noach im vayvarach Hashem Elokim bracha. Sorry, vayvarach Hashem Elokim bracha ki inyan shemar b'dagim ubavur shediber b'sha'ar nefesh hachayav amar shirtzu b'aretz uparu v'ravu al ha'aretz amar kan v'atem ha'adam paru v'ravu amar. Okay, here we go. This is the part I wanted. Shartzu b'aretz uruvuva, swarm the earth and multiply it. Ki yichpol hamitzvah lechizuk. He repeated the mitzvah for reinforcement. Okay, that's answering the El's observation, which is why does he say ravu twice? Okay, that we know that the Torah will repeat mitzvahs that it wants to emphasize, and Ramban even draws it out, lomar, as if to say she's askupa b'chol yicholes. Be involved in pru uruvu with all your ability. Okay, yeah. All right, so that's what he says, and I think the Radak. also says, I might be misremembering this part. Okay, well, he says Shartsu is Inyan Hashrita who rov haholada. Shartsu means have lots of kids. Vamar Od, V'rabuba lefi shahayu ma'atim hayotim min hateva. There were few of them who left the ark. Noach banav levad. Kefil Inyan habracha lahem lechazik hadavar keminhag. He repeated the bracha to strengthen it as is the custom. Okay, so in other words, you have now 4 instances of God endorsing this. He implies it when he tells them how to leave the ark. He blesses them, and then he commands them, and then he either repeats the commandment or repeats the blessing for emphasis to say either you got to do this with all your might, or you will be very, very fruitful. Okay, so at this point, you would expect Noach to engage in peruvu. However, God then launches another speech. Okay, Pasuk Ches, V'yomer Elokim el Noach el Albanav lemor. God spoke to Noach and his children, saying, Va'ani hineni mekim es brisi itchem ve'zarchem acharechem. Behold, I am establishing my covenant with you and your offspring after you. And this is where Rashi explains why Noach didn't want to have kids. Okay, so he says like this. Ani hineni, behold, I behold. Rashi says on Tes, hineni, behold, I maskim imach. I agree with you, Noach. Noach doeg lasuk bepiria verivia. Noach was worried about engaging in peruvu. Ad shiavtichu hakadosh baruch hu shelo lahashchis haolam od. Until God promised him to not destroy the world again. Okay, so plain shot. Why didn't Noach want to have kids? What was he worried about?
They would be destroyed.
Yeah, they'd be destroyed, right? So it's reasonable. Okay, so God's saying, don't worry, Noach, that's a good concern. And I agree with you that if I were going to destroy the world again, then there would be reasons to not have kids. Okay, but he says like this, V'chein asa ba'achrona. So too he did at the end, Amar ani maskim lasos chizuk v'kiyum lebris avtachasi v'ten lecha os. I'm also going to strengthen my covenant by giving you a sign. Okay, and this is then when he says the rainbow, and I'm actually going to read this with Neima Novetsky's excellent Hebrew or English translation, because I want you to realize how repetitive this is. Okay, and it's a whole separate question about why it's so repetitive. So God said to Noach and to his son, saying with him, saying, as for me, behold, I am establishing my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature which is with you, from the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals with you, from all who came out of the ark, every living thing of the earth. I will establish my covenant with you. All flesh will not be cut off again from the waters of the flood, and there will not be another flood to destroy the earth. God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I am setting between me and you and all living creatures with you for everlasting generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I make clouds on the earth, the bow will be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and all living creatures of all flesh, and the waters will not again become a flood to destroy all flesh, and the bow will be in the cloud, and I will remember to see, I will see it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of all flesh that are on the earth. God said to Noach, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all the flesh that is on the earth. Okay, very repetitive. Okay, but you notice there are 3 speeches here. Okay, it says 3 times. First one is Vayomer Elokim el Noach ve'el banav ito lemor. God speaks to Noach and his sons, tells him he's not going to destroy the earth. Then Vayomer Elokim, then this is just a pronouncement of God, not to any specific audience. And that's where he says the rainbow. And then the real repetitious one, so you can argue that that second speech is not redundant because the first speech he didn't mention the rainbow. He just mentioned the promise. Second speech he mentions the rainbow. But then the third speech seems redundant. Vayomer Elokim el Noach, and this is just to Noach. Zos os abris asher hakimosi beni uvein kol basar asher al haaretz. This is the covenant that I will establish between me and between all flesh that is on the earth. So the question is, why do you need this third speech? So the Radak answers, V'yomer Elokim shilesh od hamamar leNoach. He repeated the statement a third time to Noach, lechazik libo, to strengthen his heart, ulahavtichu havtacha gemura bezeh, and to promise him with a complete promise. Okay, so now let's add it up, and we're going to ask our major question. Okay, which is actually okay. I'm going to front load it. Okay, which is, why was Noach reluctant to let's use a stronger word, unwilling to procreate after the flood, despite all of God's assurances, commandments, I guess, instructions and assurances. Okay, and let's count them. Okay, Hashem, so Hashem, implicitly endorsed Noach's reproduction efforts, okay, by telling him how to leave the ark. Okay, hold on a second. I'm gonna actually make this into outline. Okay. B, blessed him, saying pru uruvu. C, commanded him, saying pru uruvu. Specified that he should, specifying vishartsu, okay, emphasizing that he should have lots of kids and engage in pru uruvu with all his ability. Okay. E, reinforced his commandment or blessing by repeating uruvu. Okay. F is addressed Noach's concern about a potential future destruction by making a covenant to not destroy the earth again. G, made a sign of the covenant to reinforce it. And H, repeated his covenant in a speech specifically to reassure Noach himself. Okay, so there are certain cases where, in Torah, where you feel like maybe God could have done more. I don't feel like God could have done more, right? Like, what more can you ask for other than God's endorsement, blessing, commandment, repeated endorsement, commandment, specification that you should use all your might, addressing your concern by making a covenant, making a sign of the covenant, and repeating the covenant in a speech directly towards you. The only thing God could have done is hijack Noach's free will and made him reproduce, which I think God wouldn't do, right? So what if you didn't know that there's a game that Rabbi Foreman plays on Aleph Beta, where he says I forgot what he calls it, but it's something like how would you write the story, or what do you think happens next if we didn't know the story? What do you think would happen right when the speech ends? You would think that Noach engages in procreation, but what happens? He gets drunk, and then bad stuff happens. Okay, so that's now where we get to the topic that initially prompted this exploration. But right now, any questions on this part? Because this is our second major question.
Yeah, I have a general question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. Maybe you said something about this. Are these the fact that Hashem, the sign and the speech and everything telling him about how nothing is going to be destroyed? This is what is it how do we know that that's specifically addressing his concerns about procreating?
So Rashi says explicitly.
It was okay. Is Rashi?
Okay. I'll just read it again though. On Hineni, on the pasuk that says, "I'm going to make a covenant with you and your offspring," Rashi says, Hineni maskim imach, I, Hashem, agree with you. Shahaya Noach doeg lasok b'piriya v'rivya, because Noach was worried about engaging in pruruvu ad she'avtichehu HaKadosh Baruch Hu shelo lahashchis ha'olam od, until God promised him to not destroy the world again.
Okay, thank you. I just missed that. Thank you.
And again, at this point, you would think that Noach's initial reluctance to engage in pruruvu was warranted from the fact that God says, I agree with you. Okay, so up until this point, Noach is not guilty of any fault until we get to now Aliyah number 6, which is in Yud Ches. So what happens? Vayihu b'nei Noach hayoti min hateva Shem v'cham v'yafes v'cham hu avi Kna'an. The sons of Noach who went out from the ark were Shem, Cham, and Yafes, and Cham was the father of Canaan. Next commercial break. Where did I put it? Hold on. I have to recommend another book. Okay, so the Maggid series is very good. Most of them are blue. Maybe the blue one is on Nach, and this is on Chumash. So this book, Creation, the Story of Beginnings, by Jonathan Grossman, is a literary analysis of the opening parshios of Berashit up through chapter 11. But it's the kind of literary analysis I like. It's combining literary analysis with academic research with classical mepharshim. Okay, so he raises an interesting question here, which I think is a good question to ask about when reading Torah in general. He says, is this story of Noach in the vineyard, is this the conclusion to the Mabul story, or is it the introduction to the generations story, account of the generations? Okay, because it goes and then it says the generations afterwards. Not that it has to be one or the other, but depending on how you read it, it's going to have a different like emphasis. Okay, so I'm not going to answer that question right now, but just be aware of that. That it looks like it's starting to say, the generations. It says Shlosha Ele b'nei Noach. These three are b'nei Noach. Ume Ele naftal kol haaretz, and from them the entire earth spread out. Which, by the way, again underscores that this whole lead up is making you expect the pasuk to say, and Noach had a bunch of kids. But what does it say? These are the only children Noach had, and they were fruitful and multiplied and spread out over all the earth, right? So it's almost like highlighting that Noach failed to implement this command. And then it says in Chaf, Vayacha Noach ish adama vayita karem. Okay, there's a lot of ways to translate this. So you can either translate Vayacha as Noach began, like Lashon Tchila, or like Rashi does, Vayacha Noach asa atmo chulin. He desecrated himself. Shahaya lo lasuk b'netia acheres. He should have been involved in a different planting. Okay. So Noach ish adama began vayita karem, and he planted a vineyard. Okay. The question that one might ask is, was Noach the first one to plant a vineyard? Answer is yes. I think the Ramban says this. I think Ramban says, Vatam vayachel kihu hechel linto. So he takes it as he began. Kihu hechel linto akarim. He began to plant a vineyard. Ki rishonim natu gefen. The earlier generations planted grapes. V'hu hechel linto gafanim rabim. He planted many grapevines. Shuros hanikra keren. Many rows, which is called a vineyard. Ki biritzoso beyayin lo nata hagefen kishar ha'ilanos v'asa keren. Because since he wants wine, he wouldn't just plant a single grapevine like other trees, but rather he would make a keren. So in other words, Noach went into this wanting to make a vineyard, wanting to make wine. That's why he planted a vineyard. So this was a premeditated thing, it seems like, according to the Blame Shot. And what was premeditated? This part. Vayesh 21. Vayesh mina yain veshkar. He drank from the wine and became drunk. Vayisgal b'soch ohalo, and he became exposed in his tent. Plain shot is he like exposed himself like he was naked. Okay. I'm going to read this Rashi because it might play into a future thing. B'soch ohalo ksiv. Okay, so if you look at the word in Hebrew, it is written as ohala. Okay, but we read it as ohalo with a o sound. Remez she'asiris hashvatim shenikru al shem Shomron. This is alluding to the 10 tribes that are called by the name of Shomron, shenikras ohala, which are called by Yechezkel ohala. That's the nickname of the 10 tribes. Galu al esek yayin. They were exiled because of wine. Shnemar, as it says, hashosim b'mizrukei yayin. So we are, I think, more familiar with why the base of Mikdash was destroyed. Because the first Mikdash was destroyed because of Giloi Rayos, Shvichus Damim, and Avodah Zarah. But the 10 tribes were exiled. One of the things that's emphasized is they were exiled because they were drunkards. Okay, they were involved in alcoholism. All right, and so Rashi is saying that this spelling of ohalo is alluding to the 10 tribes. Okay, so just pocket that for later. Okay, so then what happens? I skipped an important. Yeah, I skipped an important point. Yud Ches says, "Vayihu b'nei Noach hayotim min hateva Shem v'Cham v'Yafes." The sons of Noach who left from the ark were Shem, Yacham, and Yafes. V'Cham hu avi Canaan, and Cham was the father of Canaan. Okay, and Rashi gives us a little clue here. Okay, Rashi says, "Lomar Lamal Hutrach Lomar Cain." Why did it need to say that he was the father of Canaan? Okay, and by the way, Canaan is a person. Okay, I'll show you. Canaan was, it says in Berashit 10:6, Ubnei Cham, Cush, Umitzrayim, Uput, Canaan. That Cham had 4 sons: Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Okay, but then obviously Canaan became the nation of Canaan, just like Mitzrayim became the nation of Mitzrayim, Cush became the nation of Cush, and Put, I don't think we really hear about in Torah. Okay, so Rashi again here says, why did it need to say this? Because this parsha deals with Lefisha haparsha asuka b'shikruso shel Noach, because the parsha deals with the drunkenness of Noach. Shekil kel ba Ham, that Ham acted corruptly with the al yado niskala Canaan, and as a result of Ham, then Canaan was cursed. V'adayin lo kasav toldos Ham, but the Torah has not yet written the offspring of Ham. We don't know that Canaan was his son. And that's why it is written here that Ham was the father of Canaan. Okay, this is what I call, I think they call this in literature Chekhov's gun. That like, I guess in one of the Anton Chekhov stories, then like there's a gun in an earlier scene and he like mentions it then because it's going to become relevant later on. So this is kind of like that, where like it mentions it now as like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen later on, but also to give us the information. Okay. So what does happen? So in 22, it says again, Vayar Ham Avi Canaan. So Ham, the father of Canaan, saw Eis Ervas Aviv, the nakedness of his father, Vayaged Lishnei Echav Bachut, and he told it to his two brothers outside. Okay, so if you just read the pesukim, it would sound like what happened is he saw it and he told his brothers. Okay, and in fact, the Ramban says, and I'm just contrasting what Rashi is going to say with the Ramban. What does it mean? He says, is it not the Ramban? Hold on. Yeah, he says, the Ramban says, actually, you know what? Hold on. Yeah, here we go. V'hine hachet shera'a Ham ervas aviv v'lo nahag bo kavod. So the chet was that Ham saw the nakedness of his father and he did not treat him respectfully. Shahai roy lo lachasos ervas. So he should have covered his father's nakedness, ulachasos klona, and to conceal his shame, shelo yagidin le'echav, and not tell his brothers. But what did he do? V'hu higid, he told the matter, hadavar l'shnei echav, to his two brothers, bifnei rabim, in public, lehalig alav, in order to mock his father. V'zetam bachutz. That's why it is said in the pasuk, he told it to them outside. V'chein tirgum unklos bashuka. Unglos translates it as in the marketplace. Okay, so yeah. V'tam ve'ida es asher lo asalo shegilach harpasa l'rabim v'hayabosh b'davar. And when the pasuk says later on that Noach, it's going to say later on, Noach knew what his son did to him. Shegilach harpasa l'rabim, namely that his son revealed his disgrace to the masses, v'hayabosh b'davar, and he was ashamed. Okay, so that's plain pshat. Okay, is that Ham saw the nakedness of his father and told it in a degrading way to his brothers. But what does Rashi bring down? Okay, this is the famous Rashi, but famous also because this is the type that they don't teach in elementary school. So Yesh Me Rabbeinu, there are those of our rabbis who say sirso, that he castrated him. He cut off his genitals, cut off Noach's genitals. V'yesh omrim rava'o, and there are those who say that Ham sodomized his father. He raped his father. Okay, so that's what Chazal say. It's a machlokas. Okay, did he castrate him or did he rape him? Okay, now where do they get that from? So it's going to say later on. The Torah goes on. Chav Gimel, Vayikach Shem v'Yefes es hasim la v'yasimu ashchem shnehem. Shem and Yefes took the cloak and placed it on the shoulders of both of them. V'yilchu achoranis, and they walked backwards. Vayichasu eis ervas avihem, and they covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they did not see the nakedness of their father. So really, they did the exact opposite of what Ham did. Ham saw, they did not see. Ham, they concealed, and Ham, they covered, and Ham did not cover. And then Ham told it to people, and they did not tell it to people. Okay, and what happens? Noach awoke from his wine, and he saw what his small son had did to him. Okay, now Benoach Katan, what's the problem with saying what problem do you think Rashi is going to refer to by saying he saw what his younger son had did to him?
How do you know if he was unconscious?
Okay, so that's one question which Rashi, I think that's what prompts Chazal to say that he was either raped or sodomized, because it makes it sound like Noach knew this immediately when he woke up. So if all Ham did was look at him and then go outside and tell the brothers, what did Noach see, that made him know this? Okay, but if he was castrated or raped, then of course he's going to know. All right. But there's a problem with Beno HaKatan.
Is Ham not the youngest?
Yeah. So plain pshat is Ham is not the youngest, right? It's Shem, Ham, and Yefes, right? So Ham is the second son, according to plain pshat. Okay. There's a whole big machlokas about what the order is. Okay. Like, for example, there's some Mepharshim who say that Yefes is put at the end because if you have single syllable names, you end on the multiple syllable one. Okay. And some say Shem is put first because Shem was not the oldest, but he was the greatest. Okay. But plain pshat, at least this is a question that needs to be answered. What does it mean his youngest son? So Rashi agrees that Ham was not the youngest son. So he interprets it Beno HaKatan, Beno HaPasul HaBazui, the invalid, degraded son. Kamohine Katan Nasaticha Bagoim Bazui Atamaod. Like it says in Ovadia, I have made you among the nations Katan and degraded exceedingly. So it's basically saying like he saw what his worst son had done to him. Okay. So then what happens? So what would you expect Noach to do? You would expect him to rebuke or punish Ham, but that's not what happens. Vayomer, he said, Arur Kanaan, cursed be Kanaan, Eved Avadim Yelechav. He will be a slave of slaves to his brothers. Okay. Then he says, Vayomer Baruch Ad Hashem Elokei Shem, blessed is blessed of Hashem. Sorry, Baruch Hashem, blessed is Hashem, Elokei Shem, the God of Shem. V'hi Chanan Eved Lamo, and Canaan will be a servant to him, to Shem. Yaft Elokim Liefes, may God expand Yefes, V'yishkon Ba'olei Shem, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, or he will dwell in the tents of Shem. V'hi Chanan Eved Lamo, and Canaan will be a servant to him. Okay, so the question obviously is why does God curse Canaan if Ham is the one who did this bad thing? Okay, so Rashi mentioned earlier Vayar Ham Avi Canaan, that why does it mention Canaan in that pasuk when it says that Ham saw? Yishmi Rabbasinu Omrim, there are some of the rabbis who say Canaan Ra'av Higid La'avi, that Canaan is the one who saw this, and then he told Ham, and then Ham is the one who spread it. Okay, but since it started with Canaan, that's why Canaan gets cursed. But that's a little dissatisfying because it sounds like then that Ham doesn't get punished. Okay, Lakach Huskar al Davra b'niskala. Okay, Rashi says that's why Canaan is punished. But
Who said these curses?
Noach says curses. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I also thought that God is the one who curses Canaan and blesses Shem and Yefes. I don't know if that's where you're coming from, but it is Noach. Okay, this is the last Rashi we're going to do. So Rashi though gives a different answer. Why is Canaan the one who's cursed? So he says, Ata garamta li shelo laholid ben revi'i l'sham sheni. You Ham caused me, Noach, to not have a fourth son to serve me. Arur bincha haravi'i lios mashamish es zaram. Your fourth son will be cursed to serve their offspring. Shel elu hagdalim, the offspring of these greater sons. Shehutal alehem toreach avodasi mi'ata. That their avoda will be my avoda, right? The avoda of me will be placed upon them, upon Canaan and his offspring from now and on. Uma ra'acham shasir. So why did Ham castrate his father? Okay, even though Rashi mentioned both possibilities earlier, sounds like he's going with the opinion that he was castrated. Amar lahem et le'achav. Ham said to his brothers, Adam Harishon shnei banim hayulav. Adam Harishon had two sons. Okay, Cain and Hevel. Ubishvil Yerushas ha'olam amad zev haragazeh. And because of the inheritance of the world, they got up and killed one another. Okay, so I gave shiur on this last year, a series of shiurim on Cain and Hevel, and there's a pasuk in Cain and Hevel, in the account of Cain and Hevel, that is like openly weird. That it says in Vav, in Berashit Daled Vav, Vayomer Hashem. Sorry, no, not Vav. In Daled Ches, Vayomer Kain el Hevel achiv, It says, and Cain said to Hevel his brother, and then it just trails off. And then it says, and it was when they were in the field, Cain got up and killed Hevel his brother. So the question is what were they arguing about? So Rashi doesn't bring it down here, but Chazal mentioned as one of the possibilities, they were arguing about how to divvy up the world. Okay, one of them said all of the like the real estate in the world is mine. Okay, like all the land is mine. And the other one said all of the metaltalin, all of the movable items belong to me. And then the one who said the real estate is mine said, you're standing on my land, get off of it. And the other one said to his brother, your garment that you have, take it off, it's mine. And then Cain killed Hevel. Okay, so that's what Cham is referencing here. Cham says Adam Rishon had two sons, and they were arguing about how to divvy up the world, and they killed each other. Our father has three sons, and he wants a fourth son. We're gonna have to divvy up the world even more, so that's why he killed him. Okay, and I think that is the end of the narrative. And then what happens is
Wait, so that's why who killed who?
So that's why Cain killed Hevel, because they were arguing about how to divvy up the land. And then that's the argument that Ham is making to his brothers, which led Ham to castrate Noach, because he saw that Adam's sons were already squabbling because of the dividing of the inheritance. Noach's sons are gonna be squabbling also. And if Noach has more children, they're gonna have to divvy it up even more. So he killed his father to prevent him. He castrated his father to prevent him from having more kids, because that would lead to more fighting about the inheritance.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then the pasuk says, "Vayu koimei Noach tisha me'el shana v'chamishim shana v'yamos." The days of Noach were 950 years, and he died. And then the next parak, which we read at the beginning of the shiur, "Ve'ele toldos b'nei Noach shem cham v'yafes v'yivaldu lehem banim achar mabul." These are the offspring of the sons of Noach, Shem, Cham, and Yafes, and they had kids after the flood. Okay, and then it goes through all their descendants. Okay, so Noach no longer has an active part in the story. So the question here, and then we can add questions if we want. Question here is two questions. One, what exactly happened let's put it this way. Okay, why instead of procreating did Noach plant a vineyard, drink, and become drunk? Okay, and then what does this story and its ramifications have to do with Noach's unwillingness to procreate? And I'm gonna say, what if anything? Okay, and obviously I hold that it does have something to do with it, because again, I think if you just read the flow of the story, Noach gets all of these assurances and commandments to have kids, and instead of having kids, he gets drunk. So I think it stands to reason that this story does have to do with like with Noach not having kids, because this story is what happens instead of Noach having kids. And also, if you have to think about it, right? The Ramban says Noach should engage in Puruvu with all of his might. Well, guess what? If you plant a vineyard and harvest it and make grapes, and make wine, that takes a very long time. Okay, don't tell me that Noach didn't have time to engage in Puruvu, and also don't tell me that Noach had trouble engaging in Puruvu, because he had God's repeated blessings, to do this. So like Noach, at best you could say he stalled and did this whole vineyard thing before having kids, but at worst you could say that he planted the vineyard instead of having kids. But either way, I think there's ample evidence here to say that there is a relationship between the two stories, and that's like what prompted this year, and that's what I want to answer for next time. Okay, any other questions that you want to add to these three about the morality of animals, Noach's unwillingness to procreate, and then what the vineyard has to do with it? Yeah, Tamar?
Yeah, I guess this is technically like a minor question, but I think like it's really weird that there's this midrash about Cham castrating him, because it's like a different reason that seems not related that he didn't procreate.
Yes.
So I guess what's the relationship between that and the other
Okay,
things?
good. Yeah. So I think that it is not unreasonable to say that the reason why Chazal were forced to say that Ham castrated his father was in order to answer the question of why Noach didn't procreate, So the most logical thing to say for why Noach didn't procreate is he couldn't, right? But why wouldn't he be able to? God said, be fruitful and multiply. So it must be that something happened to him, And by the way, let me show you another midrash, which I can't explain, which is a wacky midrash, but it's responding to the same question. Okay. So it says in Midrash Rabbah, this is in Berashit Rabbah on chapter 9, section 21:4. Amar Rav Huna b'shem Rabbi Eliezer b'nosha Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Noach kishiyat min hateva hikishu ari ushvaro. Noach got attacked by a lion who wounded him. Ubal l'shamash mitaso, and when Noach went to go have relations with his wife, v'nis pazer zaro v'nis baza. I won't explain that in detail, but let's just say the plumbing didn't work out and he wasn't able to have kids. Okay, like he got mangled in his genitals from the lion and he couldn't have kids. So I don't know where they get that from in the story, but it's trying to answer this question of why Noach didn't have kids. So I agree with Tamara that it seems like the castration thing has something to do with Noach's unwillingness to have kids. The question is what? Okay. Any other questions, or should we call it a day? Okay, let's call it a day. And here's what I cannot promise. Okay, well, let me start with what I can promise. I can promise that I have an approach. Okay, God willing, I will have a full approach next Friday. But in the event that I don't, I think the plan will be to go over the approach that I do have. And then if there are any other tidbits on the Parsha of Noach or on the Parsha of Lech Lecha, which is next week, we'll use the remaining time to discuss that. Okay, so we'll see what we come up with. And if you have other thoughts or questions about this throughout the week, then feel free to let me know. And I was thinking about it some more. I think I actually do want to start a WhatsApp group that you can opt into. I'm not going to force anyone into it, called something like Post Women's Shiur discussions for both Thursday night and Friday night. I'm just going to make it one group because there are points that I always want to bring up after the fact, and I have nowhere to share them. Okay, so we'll start that. Okay, and you can opt in.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you suggest, where should we start thinking about this question? It's a very good question. Right? Should we start by thinking of what Noah's mindset must have been?
Yeah. So I also have the same question, where to start. And I also have the same starting point, which is putting yourself in Noah's shoes. Noah must have actually thought that the reason why he wasn't going to be procreating was because there's going to be another flood. Okay. I'll give you an analogy. This might help you to think about it. Sometimes okay, I'll give you an example. Okay. And this is a little bit of a degradation on my part. That, it's a big mitzvah to go pay a shiva call. Okay. And I do pay shiva calls when they're in the neighborhood. And one of the excuses I give myself for when I don't pay a shiva call is I don't have time to drive to the place, where it is. And I'm too busy. But there was a night in recently where there was a shiva call that they were davka not having people in person. They were just having it on Zoom. And I had free time. Okay. And I realized that the excuse I was giving myself was just an excuse, that there's no reason why I can't use those excuses. And so I was forced to face the fact that no, I really just didn't want to do the shiva call. And so I did the shiva call, So I feel like something like that went on with Noach, where I'm sure if you asked him why he didn't want to have kids before the whole rainbow thing, he would say, I don't want to bring kids into the world if it's just going to get destroyed again. And he actually believed it. But then once God told him and promised him that he's not going to destroy the world again, that excuse no longer happened. And now the question is, what was Noach thinking after that? And I do think that we have to address that, and yeah, it's always dangerous to psychologize the Torah's figures. But I think here, this is one of these cases where you can't understand the story unless you understand, you can't learn from the story until you understand what was Noach thinking. And this is where I think it's relevant what we said earlier. Was Noach a tzaddik on par with Avraham Avinu, or was he just a tzaddik relative to his generation? And I think that's going to affect how how we interpret his decision here, his behavior. And in terms of where we start, I don't know. Like, I think this is one of these cases where you have all the facts in front of you and you just gotta like let your mind go where it goes, you know. But I do think that it's reasonable to start with Noach's mentality. Okay, good luck.
All right, thank you.
Yep. All right, have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.